Happy Monday, friends. We are officially in Scorpio season. This is a time where we see Halloween, we see Samhain, we see All Saints Day, Dia de los Muertos. There is a host of cultural, historical celebrations that happen in Scorpio season that very much kind of sum up what Scorpio energy is about. Of course, there's more layers to it, but Scorpio energy is very much about the other worlds, the other forms of life that we don't necessarily see directly on the surface. Scorpio is an energy that's insanely good at seeing beneath the surface, kind of knowing when somebody's BSing, when somebody is not being authentic, because it sees beyond just what's at surface level and even beyond the veil, so to speak. If you're not familiar with that term, when we talk about beyond the veil, that's this idea of we have a very physical, very tangible world. It's very scientific, it's very logical, but there's times where we get glimpses of there's something more to this, right? There's spiritual realms outside of the physical plane that we typically interact with on a day-to-day basis, and the veil kind of separates the two. That's a term that gets used for that. So Scorpio, it sees beneath the surface and beyond the veil. That is very Scorpio energy. Scorpio is a water sign. It is, I think of it as the depths of the ocean. That's kind of the ecology of Scorpio. This is not, again, not surface level. This is well below and beyond the depths. Scorpio is a very alchemical sign. It changes things. And so when you think about what happens at the depths of the oceans, think about lava coming forth and creating an island. That's what I mean when I say alchemical or it changes things. What happens within Scorpio energy is things go in as one and come out as another. Come out changed, come out refined. This is something that we've talked about a little bit in past episodes, even of what happens when you put metals into the fire or into a fire is anything that's not the pure metal gets burned away. And so this is a way of refining and transforming metals into their pure essence. And Scorpio, if we allow it to, will transform us into our pure essence. So, a couple of just things about Scorpio that are helpful to know. Like I said, it's a water sign, it's the depths of the ocean. It can be very dark, very intense. It is ruled by Mars. And this is interesting because Aries is also ruled by Mars. And Mars is considered the planet of war. It's considered the planet of conflict, right? Those are two energies associated with Mars. Other energies associated with Mars are boldness and courage and action taking. And when you think about Scorpio, this is the boldness and the courage that comes from deep within and is a little bit more stable and steady than Mars in Aries is. Aries is a fire sign, and Mars in Aries is very like quick to take action, quick to fight things, quick to battle, bold, decisive. Mars in Scorpio is tempered by the water around it. And this is where that idea of like the lava coming up through the water to create an island comes from. That again is Mars fire in Scorpio, deep water. It also, ever since Pluto was discovered, Pluto has been associated with Scorpio because it's really associated with the underworld, with magic, with mystery, and those very Scorpio themes. This season, like I said, it brings Halloween, Dia de los Muertos, All Saints Day, Samhain. It's the peak of autumn. It is a fixed sign. So our cardinal signs are where we get the first part of a season. The fixed signs means we're fully in that season. And then the mutable is we're going to be changing from one season to another after that sign. So when we go around the zodiac wheel, those all come. But fixed signs tend to be they can be stubborn, they can be hard-headed, they can be unrelenting. They don't like to change so much. So once, someone with a strong Scorpio placement, or Taurus is another fixed sign. Once you make up your mind on something, it's hard to change gears. It's hard to move on. So there's some shadows associated with Scorpio, and there's gifts associated with Scorpio. This is the case for all of our zodiac signs. There's a continuum of energy. So we always have the shadow side, and then we have the gift side. And this, again, I get this, I've shared this before, but I get this concept from the concept of gene keys, where you have the shadow, the gift, and then the pure essence, the siddhi, Siddhi. And I think this is a good time to share it, just because it's, again, Scorpio is all about the spiritual, psychic, intuitive, the underworld. Gene keys there's a lot to go with gene keys, but in terms of how we use gene keys in connection to astrology, it's just a more nuanced way of looking at it. So you can say, oh, my sun is in Scorpio, but then you can have 6 different gene keys associated with that are each going to have their own shadow, their own gift, and their own pure essence. And what we do with the information about those continuums is we go, okay, often we live in the shadow side of things. So as I share the shadows of Scorpio, think about where might you see these in your own life? And then our kind of growth trajectory, if we're choosing to work with these energies to grow, is by tapping into the gifts that each sign brings to us. And in tapping into the gifts, we will get glimpses of the pure essence of those signs. We don't necessarily work toward that pure essence. We really want to kind of live within that gift realm and allow the pure essence to come as it does. So some of the shadows of Scorpio, because it is such an intense sign, it can be secretive. It can be destructive or vengeful. It can be a sign that is a little prone to addiction, that like seeking out of intense experiences can lead toward addiction or destruction or vengeance. Those are some of the shadows of Scorpio. I think its intensity, Scorpio's intensity, is kind of both a shadow and a gift, kind of depending on how that plays out. Scorpio is very wise, and a lot of this comes from Scorpio's psychic and intuitive abilities. That there is a wisdom to Scorpio and to those with strong Scorpio placements that I think is unrivaled by any of the other signs. Scorpio is this like natural investigator. It asks questions, but not in the same way Gemini does. Gemini tends to ask questions because it's like, well, what's the other side of the story, kind of a thing. Scorpio asks questions to really get to the bottom of things, to really uncover the truth, to go, okay, let's peel off all the different layers of identities that we've put on or things that we've learned from society and get to the core of who we are. That's the kind of questions that Scorpio asks. So it's that natural investigator. Scorpio can be very alluring, very seductive, very mysterious. It's a sign that's associated with sex and sexuality and intimacy. Those are all very kind of Scorpio related things. So as you think about Scorpio season, think about what are you willing to get intense about? What is it that you might want to focus on? This is kind of a key question for Scorpio. You think of the symbol of Scorpio as the scorpion. And there's a couple of really cool things about scorpions. One, you typically see them in dark places, either at night, in small crevices. When I lived in Phoenix, we would go out. We had one particular set of friends who we knew that their trees had a ton of scorpions on them. And so at night we would go out with black lights and we would shine it on the trees to see all the scorpions. It was a trip. It was a little bit creepy because it's like, these things can sting. But for the most part, they left us alone unless they were threatened. But they're kind of, again, they're associated with darkness. That is Scorpio. So the way that scorpions work is they wait for their prey to come to it. They are not out searching. They'll wait there. And when their prey gets within striking distance, they strike. And that's the intensity and the focus of Scorpio that can be, again, both a shadow and a gift, right? If it's used for destructive purposes, if it's used to hold power over people, if it's used for selfish reasons, that intensity and that focus may not be such a great thing. But when tapped into the gifts, the ability to empower others, the loyalty that Scorpio has, because once it knows someone and respects that person, they are going to be very loyal there to them. But that loyalty comes, it's not given freely, right? There's a little bit of like, you have to prove your authenticity, your willingness to go beneath the surface to our Scorpio folks before they feel that. So, using that in tandem with psychic, intuitive, spiritual, empowering energies is what's going to enable that intense focus to actually be a gift that you get to use for others. There's a couple of things that I think can help you throughout this season. One, of course, is shadow work. Scorpio energy is very comfortable in the depths. It's very uncomfortable with the darkness. It can be, I have a few friends with really strong Scorpio placements that are either sex therapists or they work with folks who have very complex trauma in their backgrounds. And they can hold space for that because that energy is, again, it's not afraid of the darkness. It's not afraid of the hard places. Doing shadow work during Scorpio season, you're so supported by this energy that has room for your darkness, that has room for the pain. It's not something that, I necessarily think people need to do on their own. There's a lot of, whether that's a really good therapist, someone who is trained in that, however you feel safest with that, but looking at your shadows, looking at your dark places, looking at your traumas, looking at what holds you back, looking at your own patterns that hold you back. Those are all things that are very supported during Scorpio season. Asking questions. This is also such a Scorpio energy. Like we talked about, this isn't a trickster energy that we sometimes get with Gemini. This is I want to go deeper with someone. And so I'm going to ask open ended questions that allow me to go deeper with them. If you're in conversation with people, being able to ask, tell me a little bit more about what you mean by that. I'm not really sure where you're going with it. Can you help me understand better? That sounds like it was probably really challenging. What was that like for you to experience that? Those are the kind of open-ended questions that I mean when I talk about Scorpio questions. So asking yourself those, asking other those, just going deeper in your relationship with others and asking questions and being open to others asking you questions. This is an interesting thing with some of my Scorpio folks that I notice is they're really good at holding space for others, not as comfortable having that space held for themselves. And I think some of that is they know how hard it is to hold that space, and not everyone has that same ability. But kind of being open to allowing others to hold that space for you can be a way of working with Scorpio energy that maybe we're not always tapping into. Tap into your intuition and your psychic abilities. Use things like oracle cards. We're going to do an episode coming up on oracle cards. Honestly, I think journaling is a fantastic way to tap into your psychic abilities, to your intuitive abilities, but really paying attention to those little nudges that you get of something that might be coming up, of a yes or no that you feel in your body about something, of if something feels off, trust. That's what I mean when I say tap into. It's not only trying to find out what your intuition might be saying, but trusting it. One of my most clear memories of early on trusting my intuition was I had a client in Kansas City, and I was supposed to go out and do a workshop with them. And I just felt in my gut, like, no, no, don't go. This isn't the right thing to do. You're not meant to be there. And that was really, really hard for me to trust because I'm like, this is a client. I have already like made the initial commitment. We hadn't bought tickets or anything like that. But it was one of those where I felt like logically, I need to go do this. I need to follow through with this. But my intuition was saying, don't do it. And so I chose to listen to that, which was so hard because, again, my brain's going, no, go. You need to go. You need to do this. You need to make the money. You need to keep the client happy. You need to go through with this. I didn't go. And that same week, my aunt passed away. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I am so thankful I'm not getting this news in Kansas City. And kind of logistically, I wouldn't have been able to then go to be with my family had I been in Kansas City when that happened. And so my intuition knew I needed to be home, not there. It's not always that drastic, right? But that's one of those memories that I can look back on and go, thank goodness I listened, because it then opened the door for me to go be with my family. And sometimes it's as simple as just don't say that thing that you're about to say. When you feel that little nudge that says maybe don't say it, zip your lips. Don't say it and see what happens. And that's one for me personally that's very challenging because once I get going, I don't want to stop. So it can be little, it can be big, but just when you get those nudges, listen and trust. And then see what happens when you do that. See what unfolds. Another tangible way to tap into this energy is set up some kind of an altar, right? Think about All Saints Day, Dia de los Muertos, Samhain, Halloween. Each of these are different ways that we set up altars around our homes or elsewhere to connect with the other worlds, whether that's the underworld, whether that's with saints, whether that's with our ancestors. We are creating a connection to extend beyond the veil, to go, I understand that physically there's a lot to life, but there's also a lot to life that is spiritual, that is energetic, that is unseen. And I want to create a visual reminder of that. So setting up some kind of an altar for that, or some kind of a sacred space, if you're not comfortable with that term, that's what an altar is it's a sacred space. It's an intentional space. And explore those different holidays too, whichever one is most aligned with your own heritage. Explore what those can mean for you and how they might help you in your growth. And then another one, with Scorpio being a fixed sign, practice, and this is bringing our Libra energies into play here. Make a decision and stick with it. Don't second guess yourself. If you find yourself second guessing, just say, look, I've made this decision. I'm going to try it out, rather than giving into the second guessing, rather than giving into the what if it doesn't work, or what if I made the wrong choice, or what if I'm making this person unhappy. Just go, this was my decision. Now, what if it does work out? What if other people are fine with it? What if nothing bad happens and I stick with my decision? And then finally, this is kind of a fun one, but with Scorpio being magical and mysterious and mystical, tap into that with your entertainment. Read a book about the fairy realms. I love the Emily Wilde series because there's so much about the fairy realms within those books. Those are, I think Heather Fawcett is the author of those. Play Dungeons and Dragons. I cannot tell you how much fun that is. I love it. Do some kind of a spiritual quest, or walk and pray through a labyrinth. Do something that connects you beyond the physical to the spiritual realm. Those are all ways that you can work with the energy of Scorpio season. You don't need to do them all. Pick one of those and see what happens when you really get that laser focus going on that. Friends, I'm so excited for these next few weeks. Like I said, we're going to do an episode on oracle cards. Mars is in Scorpio right now. Remember, that is the planet that's associated with Scorpio. So we're just extra supported in working with Scorpio energy at the moment. If you are curious about what that means for your own chart, what it means for planning, for working with that energy, you can book a chart reading with me. We can look at this in the context of your own astrological blueprint, which is so exciting to do. There's this line I heard actually today, so this is so fitting, a poem by Barbara Kingsolver. And there's a line in the poem, How to Fly. It says, "Behold your elements reassembled as pieces of sky ascending without regret, for you've been lucky enough. Imagine your joy on rising. Repeat as necessary." And I really love that for Scorpio season, because when we go through something transformative, when we are willing to look at our shadows, to sit with our darkness, to allow our pain room to breathe and to heal, there is a joy that comes on rising. It's not that that's not hard. It's not that that's not challenging. Even as we collectively are going through a period of really deep change, our elements are being reassembled. Life as we know it is being disassembled, and it will be reassembled. Imagine your joy on rising. If I can leave you with that as we enter Scorpio season, it feels so powerful because all of the change that's going on can feel like it's happening to us. And in some ways it is. And we get to choose, because we are in a very privileged position in life. I firmly believe that each one of us has a whole lot of our own privileges. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but we do. We have a lot of resources. We have a lot of access to resources. And we do get to choose whether we want to imagine joy on rising, or if we are going to get stuck in the darkness of the depths. Yes, there's darkness. Yes, it can be hard. Yes, it can be challenging. This isn't a pretend like everything is happy when it's not. It is hold on to joy. Allow even the times of holding your pain and your darkness to be done so that you can not only imagine, but experience deep joy on rising. Happy Monday, my friends. So much love to you, and I will see you next week.